we've got over 40 women testing the Belvital program.
Correct. You asked me, what was the big thing you saw on the study? The individuals that participated, their bodies started working in harmony again. Instead of fighting each aspect between all the different cells of the body and hormones and systems. And that's why you got so many testimonials of people saying, my cognitive function's better, my hormones are better, my libido came back, my weight went down, my mood, my energy, all those things. Now it's working together.
Hi, and welcome to a really exciting and special episode of The Body Experience. As you probably know, we are in development of and about to market a breakthrough program called Belvital. It's a hormone health program. And a funny quick story. I was talking to one of our new marketing people and I said, hey, we've got this exciting program. It's helping women of all ages balance their hormones and they're having amazing results with it. And she goes, oh, really? A perimenopause, menopause program? I'm like, no, it's an overall hormone balancing program. She said, oh, hormone replacement therapy? I was like, no, this is a hormone balancing program for women of all ages. Joining me today, James Laval, pharmacist. What is it with people when they hear women's hormone health, immediately go to perimenopause, menopause, and hormone replacement therapy?
Yeah, I think it's just what's been traditionally more or less brainwashed into, well, as you're aging, those hormones are going to shift, and then you're going to get hot flashes, and then you're going to gain weight, then you're going to have mood changes. But it really isn't just about that. The fact is that all your hormones are working together, and they're working together at all ages. So whether you're a woman who still has a menstrual cycle, a woman that is in menopause, or maybe even a woman who's postpartum, hormones play a critical role to how you're going to feel.
Right. Now, as a bit of background, this program is being developed and has been developed and tested by Autumn Calabrese, our super trainer. And the interesting thing about this, from a CEO perspective, a person who has helped millions of people get healthy, lose weight, achieve things, consistency with their nutrition and portions like she has, you would think she'd be the picture of health. And all of a sudden, for 2 years, I saw her sort of suffering, and it was silent suffering at first, and then she opened up to me that she had some hormone issues that she was investigating, and as she often does, that turned into the development of and a deep dive into hormone health, because that's what she was experiencing herself. So as she was developing, we thought, let's give her the support of experts in this area so that not only is she creating a program that's going to work for her, but it's got the credibility so that anybody who considers doing this program can get the results. Now, you're a pharmacist. My experience with pharmacists is I hand him a scratchy piece of paper that I can't even decrypt. He puts a bunch of pills together and hands it to me, and I give him my credit card, and there we go. But actually, a pharmacist plays a much larger role in our health and well-being than we probably even know. What is an expert pharmacist doing to help develop a hormone health program?
Yeah, well, I think that's the common misperception. There's a lot of pharmacists like myself that have dedicated, for myself, the last 40 years at understanding metabolism. So whatever it is that affects a receptor, that's what we're interested in understanding. So whether it's a drug, a hormone, a nutrient, a vitamin, an emotion, everything affects your chemistry. From my standpoint, I've taught at medical school, taught at pharmacy school. I've had clinics that I've owned and operated in conjunction with my medical crew. And in addition to that, using the Metabolic Code platform, we look at whole person health by evaluating all of an individual's hormones, nutrients, lipids, glucose, you name it. And that, of course, is directed under my chief medical officer, Dr. Andrew Heyman, who's a medical doc that's done research at a national level in integrative care. So, I've written a couple books, like 26. And
26 books?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, written 5 search database engines for healthcare professionals about things like hormones, peptides, vitamins, nutrients. So basically spent my whole career in this space and really started working with hormones in 1988 before it was popular.
Well, I think people take for granted that a doctor leaves medical school, has the certificate on the wall, and they stop learning. But there's a particular curriculum, and somebody's got to then keep them on the cutting edge of what's going on. That's the kind of thing that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the academic co-chair for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, we train thousands of doctors a year. We're the largest organization in the world that trains doctors on hormone replacement therapy, how to really recognize and utilize hormones and other therapies that help people get the most out of their life as they're moving through those different life cycles. So yeah, I've got a little bit of experience teaching over the last 40 years. And especially in the role with the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. I mean, that's been the last over 2 decades of teaching there.
So I want to now get into Belvital, because this is really interesting. So normally you would think pharmacist, put some things in a bottle, or look at the interactions in the biochemistry, blah, blah, blah. What pill do I need to take to solve this problem? But you were attracted to this because it wasn't just a pill, and we'll get to the supplements, but it was an overall comprehensive approach. How unique is that? And how important is it for really women of all ages to take something like this seriously?
Well, I'll tell you, Carl, I think it's really important to understand that if you're in a program where you're reaching out and trying to get something for yourself and get some results, right? Self-guided with support. Just taking a pill isn't going to get it done. We've seen that over and over again. And because I've been an advocate for diet, exercise, stress management, and nutrients, basically my whole career, it was incredible for me to meet Autumn. And, you know, the first thing she said was, "Hey, I think you could fit." And I said, "Well, fit what?" That was my very first thought is, what am I going to fit? Yeah. But the bottom line was to have something where you manage and understand that how you eat really matters. And you're going to teach somebody how to eat to burn fat and not just burn carbs, to really optimize your chemistry. To be able to have a fitness program that's supporting bone health and mobility and lean mass, structural function, right? All those things. And then to layer on top of it, what stress management techniques to help balance your nervous system. You know, there's a parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, and I have not had a program that I've seen where a woman that's out there looking for how can I help myself feel better, where there was even a mention of utilizing how do I balance my nervous system and balance that sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, my stress nervous system and my anti-stress nervous system. And then, of course, supplements do matter. I'm a big believer in them. I wouldn't have spent, years writing databases and monographs and 26 books about the value of nutrients if I didn't firmly believe in it and see it work in thousands and thousands of patients that we've seen in our multiple clinics. And so I thought it was incredibly thorough and innovative. So that's why I think it's important. And just to be honest with you, it's why I agreed to take on validating it through doing a specific set of labs and creating kind of a case study for this whole process.
I love that you said nutrients, not just supplements, because people think of supplements and they just look like a pill, but really what they are is a formulation of nutrition that also works with a nutrition plan. That's why those two things go together.
That's right.
So I think that's really an insightful way to put it. But let me look at just why, or ask you why something like this, why its time has come. So we've got over 40 women are testing the Belvital program. Different age groups, 20s, 30s, 40s, I think as much as late 50s.
Correct.
And some of the issues they were having: hot flashes, night sweats, low energy fatigue, irregular periods, vaginal dryness, reduced sex drive or libido, mood swings, irritability, sleep disturbance, brain fog, lack of focus, dry hair, skin issues, bone loss, muscle loss, decreased ability to handle stress, bloating, food sensitivities, and food cravings. So what sort of miracle program could possibly address those things? And is it surprising to women in their 20s and 30s that they are experiencing these kind of symptoms when they're so far from a perimenopause or even, menopause type of thing?
Well, there was one symptom I think that was left out of that big list, and they had all gained weight too. So in addition to that, they were struggling. Hey, I'm trying to exercise. I'm trying to follow a diet, and nothing's coming off. And so it's easy to see that as soon as stress starts to dominate your life, and look, I don't think stress relates to whether you're perimenopausal or menopausal. Today, it can become pretty stressful relatively quickly for someone in their 20s. And you have to realize that once you start to release cortisol, either too much or just too often during the day. Cortisol being your body's main stress hormone. And it's supposed to release a lot of it in the morning, and then it's supposed to drop in the afternoon, drop in the evening, and then drop again at bedtime. One of the biggest things that we saw in this study, honestly, is that the evening drops were not occurring, that people were staying in fight or flight. Now, we know that that is going to keep the weight on. It's going to change your mood. It's going to make you crave foods.
Why would it keep the weight on?
Well, when your cortisol's up, it makes your body release more insulin. And insulin is what's needed to try to keep your glucose down in your bloodstream. But the problem is that when you're in fight or flight, your body needs more glucose. So you end up releasing more insulin, but it ends up being turned off so that the glucose can stay in your bloodstream. Now, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
But what it's basically doing is saying, I need glucose in order to fight. I need insulin to get the glucose down in the bloodstream. But when your cortisol is being released chronically because you're not fighting a white tiger, you're answering an angry email, or you're stuck in traffic, or you're late for an appointment, right? It's these chronic stressors that keep that cortisol up. Now, all of a sudden, your body chronically starts to misguide the way it's creating those releases of those hormones. And when insulin starts to go too much, your body gets the signal, store fat.
I see.
So it's really, it's a little bit complicated, but at the same time, pretty straightforward. Stress levels high, cortisol high, insulin and glucose get out of balance, and it signals your body to store fat.
So if you just attack this on one front, let's say I'm not losing weight, so I'm just going to attack this with diet. And quite often people will attack it too aggressively with diet.
Correct.
And create more stress.
Right.
So they end up in a vicious cycle with themselves if they're not attacking the primary driver of cortisol, which is the stress level, and perhaps even their exercise. If they're layering on exercise that is also too aggressive, it is also creating that same circumstance.
No, it's exactly right. That's why it's important to get a guided program that you're able to do. Now, the one thing that we didn't go to, which was the next level, is, and when your cortisol is staying up through the day, so you're over-responded with your cortisol, it's called either flattening of the cortisol curve or exaggerating it. You have a curve of cortisol. It goes up in the morning, goes down, as I explained earlier. But the other thing that happens is the higher your stress hormones, the more it tells your sex hormones, hey, we don't need you. So you downregulate what's called gonadotropin, your gonads, gonadotropin, releasing hormone. So you're not able to make the hormones that you normally were making in terms of your sex hormones. And that can be some of the signs of why you feel the way you feel too, that because I got under stress, it shifted my sex hormones. It also has an effect on thyroid hormone. Everybody's kind of familiar with thyroid hormone, right? You hear thyroid and metabolism, but it can also turn that efficiency down. So now what are we in a situation of? My stress levels are high, which causes you to crave more comfort food. My sex hormones are down. My thyroid hormone's been turned down, and my glucose and insulin are out of balance. So now I'm eating more carbs, storing more fat, not as happy and feeling as good about myself because my sex hormones have shifted. And now because my thyroid's down, I'm feeling sluggish and tired and not feeling like I've got the energies I should have to get through the day, right? That's kind of what starts to happen as a person spirals downward.
And you're saying you or a person, but we're talking about specifically the female reaction in this case, or at least in terms of this study.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, this is very specific. For women, it alters their estrogen production. And then the more stress they're under, or maybe genetic predisposition, or if they've had a history of being on maybe an oral contraceptive and they're not making as much progesterone because that lowered it. There's a lot of reasons why these hormones shift. The whole thing that I found fascinating about the study, I got to be honest with you, and even Dr. Heyman and myself, we had quite a few discussions about this. It was that it wasn't any one hormone that made the weight come off, because everybody lost weight in the program. It was the fact that it was a symphony of regulating the family of all these hormonal relationships. You got over 50 hormones in your body. But it was that symphony of regulation. So progesterone mattered, testosterone mattered, evening cortisol mattered, right? Secretory IgA, which is a marker for the gut, that mattered. Lipids mattered, and global score. So what's a global score? All the symptoms they were experiencing plus their labs added up together to create a global score. The higher the score, the more difficulty they had with their weight, and the more weight they lost, the more the global score came down. So what's that tell you? It tells you that the Belle Vitale program helped people to overcome this family of, or whole person effect of different hormones that are out of sync. And an important one, cortisol and stress, and it allowed you to access that fat and burn the fat.
That's so interesting. In fact, I've heard Autumn make this point a number of times, that very often we, as patients, look at one particular thing, one particular number, one particular reading, and we want to attack that without thinking what effect it has to all the other things, and how just attacking that might trigger something else, which also undermines our effectiveness at solving that one particular thing. And sort of like you said, that symphony, the orchestra that all needs to work together.
That's right.
Which is, frankly, it was a little bit out of character for us to put a program together that was this comprehensive. But
right.
It's exactly why it works, right? Like if we'd have left one piece of the puzzle out, you probably wouldn't have gotten these same kind of results.
Oh no, I was so excited about doing this test because in general, if you look at medicine in general, and like I said, I've taught in medical school for 18 years, pharmacy school, appointed professor, adjunct associate professor at the University of Cincinnati College of Pharmacy, still appointed at George Washington School of Medicine and Health Sciences, have taught a lot to many professionals. But we still just focus on trying to find, here's this one point that's off, without regard to really what's really going on in the research today is what's called this multi-pronged or systems biology approach. It all matters. The more we move the whole person towards health, the healthier they become. So that's why I know I was excited about really digging into this study, was because it was a whole person approach. It was, how do we exercise to achieve better balance in your stress hormones? And the thought of breath work, and the thought of eating to help support fat burning, management of stress, exercise, and then of course, what I think is important is nutrients. The utilization of supplements that are appropriate for people to help them. When you're losing weight, typically you need more nutrients, right? So vitamin B and zinc and the various B complexes, magnesium, in addition to using botanicals that I think can be incredible to help people gain that control back. So yeah, it was amazing.
Well,
I got to tell you.
I want to talk about the supplements. I'm not I'm not a believer in miracle pills, but I do believe very strongly that when you put, similar to the way the body needs to be orchestrated, a symphony, that a supplement can be put together that is also formulated with the right amounts that actually then have synergy and can create an effect that helps enhance the results that you get from the other lifestyle choices that you're making. So what was the approach that we took from your perspective as a pharmacist that was appropriate in terms of the formulation of these two supplements? And can you give us any detail that you've got in terms of understanding what these supplements are supposed to do?
No, absolutely. I mean, and I've formulated for some of the top countries, formulated for some of the top companies, honestly, in the country. So I've got a rich history of designing products. So when I get brought in to look at a formulation and kind of give my 2 cents, I always find it to be interesting. And what I thought was great was first say the stress response and stress management formula. So a lot of people don't realize the most valuable herbs in every culture since the beginning of recorded medicine. And it's interesting because I went to the University of Cincinnati College of Pharmacy. We have the largest library in the world on botanical medicine that even has documents before Gutenberg press. So this is pre-press, right? So pretty amazing that since the beginning of time in every culture, the most valued herb was always the herb that worked on stress. So traditional cultures figured out there was value in you taking an herb to manage your stress before the stress overcame your body and then you started to have symptoms from it. Today what happens is people end up breaking down, they need medication, they need something for anxiety or for depression or for mood, where it would be much smarter to look at it from a preventative standpoint and say, you know what, I'm going to take something that's an adaptogen. And so rhodiola and ashwagandha are 2 of the ingredients in the stress response formula. And they're time-tested, clinical trial validated botanicals that we know help support the nervous system. And then the other piece is that ashwagandha helps to balance out the cortisol. So it's a very well thought out formulation that has vitamins, minerals, magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, B12, like I had said earlier. So that's a very well thought out formulation.
Now, I just wanted to, before we move to the other one, somebody has a clinical issue and their doctor says, you need to be on an antidepressant. We're not recommending that they stop that, replace with this. Like, there is a role for these medications for people.
Yes.
But from a pharmacist standpoint or a biochemistry standpoint, you can naturally help the body manage its own stress with the help of these kind of nutrients.
That's 100% correct. Yeah, no, you once someone needs an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety drug, they may be on that, but there's the issue of, first of all, how can I protect myself and prevent moving in that direction, right? That's why they were so valuable in traditional cultures. So there's a difference between when you go and you get a lab test and you're looking for an illness, or you look at labs like what we did in this study, and we're looking for imbalances that are keeping women, in this case, from feeling their best. So it's more about how far are they away from being well, how are these hormones disconnecting and not functioning, and then how did it help when you took something for stress? And what we found in the study was that evening cortisol levels were corrected. So taking the stress formula, I think, played a huge role in creating that number dropping and then that correlation to weight loss. But interestingly, there was a ripple effect from that because progesterone and testosterone levels got better. Well, guess what happens when your cortisol gets managed? You make sex hormones again. Secretory IgA, which is a marker for the gut, right? Secretory IgA. So it's an immune marker for your gut that says, hey, you had mentioned food allergies, gas, and bloating as symptoms that people were having, right? So when that's happening, that was a marker that we wanted to look at. And we found out that as you did the program, learned how to eat, learned how to balance out that exercise, use nutrients correctly, manage your stress, secretory IgA went down, and that had a confidence interval of 1. That was absolutely related. That's why it's so important to do a comprehensive program. That's what I really like about Belvital is that if a woman is saying, hey, I need to do something, and I'm going to get to lean into to Beachbody and Autumn's expertise and Belvital, it gives them a program that empowers them in the most comprehensive way that I've seen on the market for someone that's looking to be able to help improve their own health.
So how about the second supplement? Like, why not just stop there? We got it covered. We got a score of 1 confidence level. We're done. Works here. Wrap it.
It's done, right? Well, once again, I think that the second supplement also covered some of the territory that was needed for that whole body approach that we were testing for. I mean, we were very specific in looking in the study at how does the global effect of Belvital work in these women? All right. Mm-hmm. So the first part, stress, right. We covered that. The second part that we have to keep in mind is every woman lost weight.
Right.
Every woman that was in the trial lost weight. From a minimum of pounds in shifts in body composition, which you could see in the pictures. I was blown away by the pictures of what you guys had categorized, right? But then up to 20 plus pounds of weight loss. So the first thing that's important was that. The second one is that the second supplement had guarana, mulberry, chromium, I would say is the feature ingredients. Mm-hmm. Why are those important? Well, one, it helped to stimulate or have a thermogenic approach to someone's metabolism. I want to stimulate burning fat. Mm-hmm. The second, chromium's incredibly important. You really can't improve glucose and insulin, in my opinion, without having chromium in a formulation. Because chromium helps the insulin receptor to function more efficiently again after the stress and all that pressure on those insulin receptors to not function as well, like I explained earlier. Mm-hmm. So the chromium's invaluable to help the glucose to stay in balance. And then guarana, mulberry, helping with thermogenic effect, burning fat. So now you've got both sides covered, but I still want to emphasize doing the exercise, watching your diet, managing the stress through doing the breath work, all of the program that Autumn put together, I think was brilliant because it touched on so many of the points where other programs may kind of fall through the cracks, because they miss one aspect of what you should be doing for someone.
Well, it's interesting. So we got stress reduction, fitness, nutrition plan, and you've just laid out aspects of the formulation. Why do I need Belvital? You just told me everything to do. Can I just go put these things together, go buy a bunch of bottles, and I can replicate these results?
Well, I mean, I'm going to put my scientist hat on.
Okay.
So first of all, we did the study that showed the results by incorporating all of the Belvital program, right?
Yeah.
So if you try to say, hey, I'm just going to do some of this on my own. I'm going to look for some of these supplements. I think I know I'm going to eat right. Mm-hmm. I think I know the right way to exercise. Why would you want to take the risk of putting, like from my viewpoint, why would I take the risk of not getting results?
Yeah.
Every woman losing weight matters, and the fact they reported, I'm fatigued less, I feel so much better, I'm not as foggy-headed, I feel desirable again, right? So they reported so many quality of life improvements. Why would you take a risk on trying to put that together on your own? I don't know.
In terms of that, all the testing, did anything surprise you as a clinician? I suppose that's the right term to use. As a person looking at this clinically, we say in these kind of things, results not typical sometimes when you've got somebody who's really like, wow, those are unexpected results. Anything sort of impress you that way?
Actually, several things. And I mean, I've run contract research organizations. As I said, I've had clinics where I've seen literally touched hundreds of thousands of patients over the last 40 years. So what was the most striking about this was that everyone lost weight. So I mean, I've run contract research organizations in weight loss. I teach weight loss certification courses to physicians. So I'm very familiar with this area of weight loss.
Yeah.
Everyone lost weight. That's, first of all, striking. So that is, results were typical were that everybody lost weight.
Right.
The other one was that when we graphed out all the data, I mean, we did a bunch of data analytics on this. I know I'd sent you guys some charts and some graphics.
Yeah.
And that in general, while everyone was losing weight, there were varying reasons for why the weight loss was occurring. So in some women, it was most important that you saw the cortisol curve come down, but in other women, it was more important that their gut health was improved. But in the end, the significance was that several of these hormones and markers moving together is what created the success. And I think that's what we're always looking for the magic bullet. I'm going to take this magic weight loss pill. I have not seen a magic weight loss pill yet. I'm like you. I'm not a silver bullet guy.
Yeah.
I think if you don't understand that it is going to take the responsibility of exercise, diet, managing your stress, key nutrients, that's the kind of program that I think offers people a vision, and I really mean this, a vision for how do I really manage my weight over a lifetime, right? As I'm a woman transitioning through these different stages of life, you're going to take these tools and you're going to learn and you're going to use them. So the biggest thing for me was stress. Evening cortisol was big. All of them moving together at the same time, all these different markers moving was big. The global score, the more a woman felt out of balance, the more it helped them and the more they lost weight. So what is that, just empirically, what's it tell me? If I'm putting my clinician hat on, it's, this is helping to balance out their chemistry to get how they feel back aligned while we see the impact, meaning they're losing weight. And look, I mean, some of the transformation pictures were stunning.
Yeah.
They were really stunning. I mean, if you want me to know what was, really tell you what I thought was the most incredible piece of it is we saw all the data. We make the graphs like Dr. Heyman and myself. We're crunching all this data and showing you guys how all these hormones are shifting. The single most important thing to me was when I saw the pictures and you saw the smiles and you saw the change in body composition and you saw the comments of how it changed their life. So I'm always a clinician first, out there trying to help people feel better. And then I love to figure out the science behind why that happened. And I think that's what got accomplished.
So that's a big, so you could call it as much as a hormone health program, it's a quality of life program. How does that,
Huge.
How does the quality of life, so we've seen that in the participants in the test group, like crazy stories of how their lives have been affected, particularly severity of premenstrual symptoms or their periods overall, or brain fog going away and mood improving, libido improving.
Right.
How does that contribute to not just quality of life, but longevity? I wonder from your perspective.
Well, as being the co-chair at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, I'm pretty interested in longevity.
I asked the right guy.
You did ask the right guy.
Yeah.
And my next 2 books coming out are all about longevity.
Okay.
So it turns out, if you looked at the Stanford study that just came out from a few weeks ago, and I'm sure everybody's looked at that one already.
Yes.
There were 2 shifts in time where aging got accelerated in men and women. One was in their early 40s and one again in their early 60s.
Yeah.
And so when I look at longevity, I'm looking at the term metaflammation. Metabolic inflammation leads to inflammation aging. Metabolic inflammation leads to inflammation. So metaflammation, inflammation. So how this program kind of helps with that process is, of course, When you have metabolic inflammation, basically your body's out of balance. A lot of things are signaling each other incorrectly. I'm not making sex hormones the way I should. My insulin and glucose is off. I'm not building bone anymore. I'm not helping to rejuvenate the neuroplasticity of my brain, right? The cognitive function of my brain. And most importantly, when metaflammation is moving through time with you as you're aging and you have these symptoms, you lose the capacity of your cells to make energy. You lose what's called mitochondrial capacity. Now, I can't make energy. When you can't make energy, guess what you're going to do? You're not going to burn fat. And you're not going to burn fat, and you're not going to have the energy to do all the functions your body should do. And therefore, you're going to start to feel all those symptoms. So the reality is, from a longevity perspective, the more you can establish a diet, exercise, stress management, and supplementation that helps your body to maintain homeostasis and not fall in to the metaflammation pathway,
Homeostasis.
the healthier you're going to be. Homeostasis meaning your body's in balance. Everything is signaling. So you asked me before you asked, what was the big thing you saw on the study? Well, it was all about homeostasis. How your body started to work back in harmony again. So the individuals that participated, their bodies started working in harmony again. And instead of fighting each aspect of that signaling between all the different cells of the body and hormones and systems, now it's working together. And that's called homeostasis. And that's why you got so many testimonials of people saying, my cognitive function is better, my hormones are better, my libido came back, my weight went down, my mood, my energy, all those things were because now you have a body that's working in harmony and working together. If people are really interested in how can I start to manage the way I want to feel day in and day out, it takes consistency, and it takes a guided program, and it takes an expert like Autumn who lived through it. I mean, in my opinion, there's nothing better. How I got into this 40 plus years ago was I was struggling with some health issues, and that's what drove me into research and understanding it. I think it's fantastic that Autumn was brave enough to come out and say, hey, I'm going to make a program to help other women because I know how bad I felt. I really mean that. I think it's amazing that she felt the need to do that.
Yeah, and she's fierce about these things because when she does it, she's like a dog with a sock. Like you cannot get her off if she believes in something helping people, and it's like, well, that's going to be a little bit more expensive. The track Pilates aspect of this, a little bit more expensive. She's like, no, this is the reason that they need this. They need the results, but we don't want to increase stress beyond X. And the supplements, how do we approach that? The nutrition program, like she goes through this, and like anybody who contemplates this thing, one thing that they know is they've got a fighter who wants to make sure that the results are what are going to end up selling the program. And let me ask you about your observation of the marketplace, because having been at this for 40 years, and
Right.
I would think that, like, have you seen a program like this? Like, why is it that we can be at this place in these modern times?
Sure.
And from my perspective, this is the first time anybody's put it all together.
Yeah, I think I haven't seen a program where a consumer can quickly get a program related to balancing out their hormones and helping really create a more comprehensive approach to their health. Haven't seen that yet. I mean, obviously, what's going on in the professional sectors, if you go into doctors that have been trained to do this kind of work, the doctors that we train, you have pockets of programs that are there. I know with my work at Lifetime as their chief science officer, we have a program. But for you to be able to pick up the phone, send an email, whatever, QR code, whatever
Yeah.
the way is that people can order this
Right.
and get a program that touches as many points as this. I don't know of one. I got to be honest with you. I
Yeah.
really don't know of a program that focused on this much of a whole person. More importantly, once again, we did the study, we looked at the results. I mean, my cohort in this, Dr. Andy Heyman, I mean, he led research for 52 academic schools on integrative medicine. He was co-directed the research. I mean, it wasn't like I had a lightweight counterpart looking at the data.
Yeah.
We were both super pumped about the fact that we just saw people getting better, seeing the weight loss come down, and getting better for what we thought was going to happen. It was helping to balance what the person needed. It wasn't just all about cortisol. It wasn't just all about something that's thermogenic or something that's, all about glucose. It was about the whole process.
Yeah.
And that was amazing.
I want to talk about the nutrition plan because actually you see a lot on social media right now. As long as you're just eating protein all day long, every day, maybe nibbling some protein at night, everything's going to get solved. Like protein has become the new miracle pill, and our nutrition plan isn't the Bell Vital nutrition plan isn't designed around that. But can we address that notion that protein is going to be the hormone cure-all?
First of all, there's no way that protein will be a hormone cure-all. I mean, one of the reasons when people eat a higher protein diet is for sure you are going to lower your need for insulin. But that's what I call putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, right? I mean, because as soon as you eat a carb, you still have that problem. What makes Bell Vital different, first of all, I've been working with diets clinically in our practice now literally since 1984, 3 dietitians on staff. When I looked at the diet that Autumn put together, it was incredibly close to what we use clinically with all of our patients, which I thought was amazing, first of all. And it's a balance of slightly higher fat, moderate protein, and slightly lower carbohydrate, which I think is the really smart way to approach balancing the way your body's utilizing glucose and insulin. And so the nutrition piece is important because as you're balancing out the stress response through the stress reduction aspect, through the nutrients that were recommended, as well as with the fitness regimen, now I can eat a more balanced diet. I'm not just taking one macronutrient and over-exaggerating it, and actually restoring metabolic function the way we're supposed to utilize nutrients in the body. So high-protein diets, I know it's a fancy term. They're Band-Aids on bullet holes.
Yeah.
Or ketogenic diets, even the very high-fat diets that are also recommended now and popular for hormone balance. Same problem's going to happen.
Well, I think that where these things become dangerous, where they just sort of whip around in popularity, is they're never talked about in terms of the way the macros relate to each other, because you're going to eat more than protein, you're going to eat more than fat, so you need to balance it with the other macros, and it also depends on actually the person's body composition.
That's right.
So like all of these factors have to be taken into account. Does Bell Vital take all those factors into account?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's beautiful about it, because when you look at the way the program was designed, first of all, the management of exercise to kind of get what I would say a flexibility to the type of exercise that you're doing, to manage the stress, to get the mobility, to get the strength, to stimulate the fat burning, that piece is pretty amazing. And then the way the diet was structured with a little bit of fasting in it, as well as getting rid of the excess sugars and the caffeine and all the additives in foods, right? Kind of what we know now, I'd almost call them toxins, right? Mm-hmm. Getting a structure around that, all of that helps move the person forward with really getting a diet that makes sense. and that you're going to get results in light of the whole program. But I can tell you right now, there is no diet alone that is going to solve for, hormonal health. That's one aspect. You need the other pillars. Stress reduction is important. Nutrients are important. Exercise is important. It's going to take effort, but when you're getting results and you're feeling a lot better, the effort's worth it.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
I hope people take away from this discussion, quite honestly, is
Sure.
look, we have a mission. Help people achieve their goals to lead healthy, fulfilling lives.
Right.
It is very easy. It's what we've seen over the course of 26 years in business is people can get enamored of one little gimmick and go
Right.
hard at it. And just the fact that they change their lifestyle at all gets them some early results. And they're like, oh my gosh, that protein thing really worked. But the underlying chemistry, biochemistry, and as you said, homeostasis, never happens. So it ends up not working long term and does not give them the quality of life that they want, which is what the miracle Belle Vitale is, the fact that she covered all of the pillars, put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And I think that's what I hope for people, is that for once in their lives, they don't accept a shortcut when it comes to
Right.
their overall well-being and quality of life. This is the time that you go all in and check every box, and you're going to get the outcome that you deserve. That's what I hope for people.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because that's the other thing. Earlier you asked me what attracted me to Belle Vitale, and that's kind of our approach when people come into us in our offices. And what I teach is, if you don't want to go all in, if you don't want to commit fully to changing your lifestyle, exercise, diet, stress reduction, what nutrients, the quick gimmick, maybe you need to go look for another quick gimmick. Because honestly, people need to understand that, left no stone unturned.
Well, I think that's why you and Autumn hit it off, is because you all agree that the health and well-being of the patient and the outcome is what matters the most. And you're not going to look the other way on a shortcut that is going to cost them dearly in the long term. And I really respect that.
Well, appreciate that. And that was an instant. Autumn and I knew when we started talking, it's almost really as if we were finishing each other's sentences, so that was great. Yeah, fantastic.
What do you think would have happened to the people participating in that study if this program hadn't come along? Like what would have progressed, do you think?
Well, I think, the biggest thing that happens is if cortisol's out of control, the mood changes get significant enough where they go down that path. They may continue to have food cravings. A lot of people reported at the beginning of the study, when we did the questionnaire, that they would have trouble with stress eating and reaching for comfort food, right? Well, if you keep stress eating and reaching for comfort food, guess what's going to happen? You're going to gain weight, you're going to spike your blood sugar, and you're going to move along that path. If your hormones are out of balance, think about it as we're aging, and we've heard this over and over again. When your hormones get out of balance in postmenopause and your sex drive is off, and maybe you feel like your desirability is down because you've gained weight, that can affect marriages. That can affect relationships. And it certainly affects someone's self-esteem dramatically. Yeah. And so I think, the cascading effect of not doing something, it's incredibly important. Not just the medical, hey, here's the diagnostic things, right?
Yeah.
The prediabetes, diabetes, the insulin resistance, the obesity, the bone loss, the osteoporosis, the mood changes, right? Those are all the things that we kind of, hey, here's a category.
Yeah.
But I think the self-esteem, which I thought rung through really clearly with the survey, that change in mood, self-esteem, cognitive effects, those are the things that drive how you feel and think every day. Like when you wake up in the morning, how you deal with your kids, how you deal with your family, how you deal with your partner, how you are at church, how you are at work. These are core things that matter most to us. I can tell somebody, hey, we dropped your lipids 50 points. Okay. What did that mean to them?
Yeah.
But if we start to change the way they feel and that shine through in the program, I think that's where it's the most gratifying.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, James. Really appreciate your contribution to Belle Vitale, the validation of what Autumn put together, and obviously supervision of the test group. So we couldn't be more grateful and honored to have you be a part of it. And of course, Belle Vitale releases in December 10th specifically on Body.com. And then in March in Canada, it'll be available. And we just hope that so many people take advantage of this 12-week program so that they can enjoy the improvement in quality of life, and the longevity that can come with that. So really appreciate you joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Awesome.